Alright, as some of you guys have probably seen in the beginning of this video, that this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. I'm strictly working with the Keda Dye Yellow Stain powder. I know that the powder is a little bit orange in appearance. I end up adding just a small amount to the water right here. You can see it's 7 ounces to try to show it off a little bit better of what the water level is. So I end up adding 1/4 teaspoon or 0.60 grams. So if you end up taking the 5 grams divided by the 0.60 grams, you usually get a little bit more than 5 grams in one of these little packets from Keda Dye, that it is going to end up giving you around 60 ounces of yellow wood stain that you can end up mixing up and using to color wood at this ratio. So you can see it is a little slightly orange in water, or in the powder appearance, but it is very yellow as a stain. I'm not sure exactly what true yellow is or what pure yellow is, because all that color is just a reflection of light. So you could have a pure yellow and you change the light and it's going to end up having a different color to it. So it's just something to think of. It's a very yellow stain. If it starts turning a little bit orange, it's possible that you probably mixed it a little too heavy, or if there's some color defects, maybe add a little bit of water to it. It really can vary. Maybe sand the wood a little bit better. If it's not penetrating the wood as well enough, then maybe don't sand it quite as fine grit. Like, don't sand your wood to 1,000 grit and then expect it to the wood stain to end up absorbing fairly well into the wood. You want to stick around 150 to 180, maybe 220 at the top. It really kind of depends. So that board I just did was the Douglas fir. I know that this is a maple, and I believe that people are quite sick of seeing maple on my channel, so I'm trying to zoom through this as fast as I can. It is a curly maple, so I got through that at quadruple time. This is a cedar board. I'm going to be applying the yellow stain to this, but with the cedar being a little bit darker of a wood, it's going to end up not being quite as bright, but you'll still see that the yellow dye here will still end up adding a really nice color enhancement to it. Just adds a lot of depth and definition to it. I do end up allowing a little bit of excess to remain on the surface of this piece, where I just let it penetrate. I put a little bit excess on here, right here, and then I just let it sit for a couple of minutes, and then I'll wipe off the excess. So it's something that you can end up doing with a little bit darker wood. Here I just end up going over that maple again with a little bit damp cloth. It has a little bit of stain on it, but it's not anything in excess, and I just go over it again. This is a piece I'm actually working with. I'm doing a clock, and this is the actual piece from the bottom portion of this clock. And I did something a little bit different on this. So I ended up taking 1/2 teaspoon of the Keda liquid amber dye, and I mixed it at a ratio of 1/2 teaspoon to 4 ounces of denatured alcohol. I put it onto this piece. I sanded it back, and it's a solid wood. And this is the back side where I didn't do any of the Sugi bond technique. But on the other side there, you can see I ended up taking the blowtorch, and I ended up getting into those deeper portions of the grain of the oak with the blowtorch to create like a Sugi bond technique. And I'm going to end up liking that color, so I'm going to end up doing it. So just to be aware that it's not the true yellow on oak, but I just kind of want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because it's a piece that I'm actually building, and I just wanted to test that color. This is the Douglas fir with the Sugi bond technique. I didn't actually use the true Sugi technique. I didn't use a wire brush and get the texture of the grains or anything. And I also didn't blacken it all that much. I just, somewhat browned it and just did a light sand back. Some of them are a little bit black, but for the most part, it's just a lighter browning. And then I ended up going over it with the stain. Excuse me. So the yellow stain is going to be a little bit darker in color with this piece, just because it's picking up some of that charred wood and it's spreading it along with the stain. and creating a little bit of a darker color with it. So it's also something to keep in mind. So if you want it to remain a brighter yellow, you could almost seal that charred wood in before you end up applying your dye stain, and then giving it a nice sand back, just to try to protect the yellow stain. But it's not significant, and it turned out really nice. So it's just something to keep in mind. There, I just wiped off the excess off of that oak piece. It ended up sitting for a couple, maybe 3-4 minutes, and then I wiped off the excess. And now this is a pine piece. All of these boards I ended up sanding out with a 150 grit, and then I ended up I went over the top of it. I'm sorry, the edges I ended up going over with a 180 grit, as well as the 150 grit. So the edges have a 180, and then the surfaces have a 150 grit on it. Anyways, the maple piece is gonna the end grain is gonna end up having a slight darker appearance to it, but it's something that I kind of want to show because different ones do different things, so these other boards, I didn't really do anything special to the end grains. It's just the way that it ends up taking the stain. So that's also something to kind of keep in mind if you're looking at the end grain and it's an important piece to you. If you want to make it lighter, like on a maple or a figured maple, you can end up doing a couple of different things, but I'll try to get into that in another video. But one of the things you can do is sand it with a much finer grit, to reduce some of the stain's penetrating power. This is a 2x4. This is just a straight up piece of pine, 2x4, and it was just sanded with the 150 grit. And there's going to be two pieces. There's going to be a second piece where I end up having a second coat that's applied to it, but I end up doing that off of camera. But I put this the black back cloth or backdrop on there, so it shows up the intensity of the yellow a little better. It really is a very intense yellow color to it, and I just wanted to show it off a little bit better. It almost seemed like the white was kind of washing out some of the color, so that's the only reason why I put that black on the background on this particular one. But you'll see some of this stuff coming up a little bit later. But for those of you guys that are actually regulars to my channel, I'm not going to go through all of the step-by-step on this. A lot of it's just kind of common sense. You just mix up the stain, apply it to wood. I mean, there's a couple tips and tricks and things like that you can end up doing. If something comes along and I need to mention it, I probably will end up saying something. But, for those of you that watch my channel regularly, I really apologize for being gone longer this time around. There's a couple things that are going on. I'm actually looking at trying to get a little bigger space for myself to work in. So that's been taking up some time, working with a real estate agent and the bank, and the building that I'm looking at, I like, and it's something that I'm interested in. But there's some zoning issues, so I'm having to deal with the city as well on certain things. So that's been taking up some of my time. Let me just break in here that I'm working with a polyurethane. On this piece, I end up using the spray can, but here you can end up seeing that my first coat of all of these pieces are going to end up being done with the polyurethane using a foam brush. And I know that some people want to see me using a foam brush or applying it with a brush, but for the most part, I like spraying. It seems so much faster for me. Especially for videos. So I really prefer to spray. It just seems like a cleaner finish for me as well. But when I do use a can, and I am gonna end up using the brush, I won't say I always do, but for the most part, I like to end up straining it. I'll strain the sealer, and I'll strain it into a clean container, because you can end up having a buildup around the edges of your can that, if you're wiping off some excess off your brush, that it can end up knocking some pieces off and sticking to your brush and getting into your actual project in the sealer. And it just seems to, it makes less defects for me when I end up straining it and then I'm putting it into a clean container. So it's just something that I like to do. But I'm just taking the compressed air and blowing off some of the stuff here, any debris, to prep the surface for the sealing process. Anyways, I'm getting back to some of the things that have been happening. There's been some technical issues that I've been having, and just some stuff, life events, babysitting my daughter's dogs, and she's looking for a new house, which is kind of fun, and that's part of the thing that ended up getting me into potentially looking for a shop. She asked me to help her out, so she would send me links for certain houses that she was looking at, and every now and then she'd send me a link with a shop, and she would say, hey, this is something that you can end up looking at. This is an option. So that's just been something else that's been kind of taking up time. I spend time with my family, so I'm pretty busy with that. So I think a lot of this stuff has been taken care of. There's a couple things, some irons, I guess you could say, still in the fire, but for the most part, I'm going to try to, get back to making some videos and just trying to create some content. I mean, it's a pretty niche market on my channel here, but hopefully it's beneficial, and, it ends up helping out and still gives some good content, and some things can be picked up. And, just give good demonstration of what some of this stuff looks like on different pieces of wood, or, as I get into it a little bit more, hopefully if I get this shop, I can end up making some bigger projects and doing some bigger things, and just having a little bit more room, because right now it's like anytime I end up turning or, bumping something wrong, or I'm sticking my elbow in some stain, or some sealer that's on a piece that's curing, or I try to sand something, I just need a little bit of room, and I'm just gonna try and see if that's something that I can end up doing. So I hope you guys can kind of overlook some of that with me being gone. But I really appreciate that you guys are here and watching my channel. So I end up finishing all of this up with the brush, and now I'm just kind of giving it between coat sanding. I'm just using a sanding sponge. It's a 180 grit, and I'm just knocking off any of the little debris or anything that could be sticking up. I'm not worried about any raised grain or anything like that. I know some people absolutely are petrified of raising grain, and water base is a sin, but on my first coat here, because I do a between coat sanding, it literally will cut off any raised grain if there is any. So I don't worry about raised grain, but that's just me. That's personally. So I don't really worry about that. So here I end up switching back over to the polyurethane can, the spray, just to make it a little bit faster, because I wanted to just try to finish some of this up, and just give some content to end up showing how certain things look with certain woods. But here I'm working on that maple. It turned out really nice. That oak piece, I'm really, really happy. Actually, they all do. I mean, they all turn really nice. Oh, and I forgot to mention that center board, that 1 foot by 1 foot, that one I'm spraying right now. My battery on my camera actually went out, and when you're working, sometimes you don't notice that your camera actually shut off. So I didn't get the second coat on there, but there actually is 2 coats of this ratio on that board. So it is a little bit darker. I won't say darker. It's not darker. It's just a little bit deeper of a yellow coloring, because there's the two stain coats on there. And when I do the 2x4s, you'll end up seeing that where I bring it in, and there'll be a side-by-side comparison of the one coat with the second coat. So it's something that you can kind of see as a visual comparison. This is that cedar board with the yellow on there. As you can see, it's added some really nice depth to it. It's lightened it up a little bit, but not much, but it's just added that depth to it. This is that maple piece. I know some people aren't going to like this, but you know, some people might. And I like maple. I mean, I just, you know, I really do. I like maple. I also like figured maple, especially something like this. It just really ends up, you know, the Keda Dye yellow, or actually the Keda Dye really ends up just really enhancing the wood so much. And you know, it just ends up creating such a nice color. But here, there's that end grain. Here, I give a good shot where I was talking how it creates more of an amber look on the end grain of the maple, whereas the other boards, it didn't do that. You know, like the pine or the Douglas fir or the oak, the cedar, it doesn't do that. But you can see it in those curls. It also has that type of color. But that's what the wood is. You know, that's what it does. It's bringing in that stain in a more intense ratio to end up creating that highlight. You know, some people call that blotching, but I don't know. I kind of like it. And there's the end grain for the Douglas fir, and it didn't end up doing that. It did it in the grains. So it's just something to really be aware of when you're finishing wood, that different woods can do different things. So if that's something that's a concern for you, you can end up sanding it with a finer grit to try to reduce any of that darkening, if that's an issue for you. Or you can end up using some kind of conditioner, or just semi-seal it to reduce some of the penetrating power of the stain. This is that oak. I really like that color. It turned out absolutely beautiful. And that clock is going to be, it's going to be gorgeous. I didn't actually show the back side of it because I didn't have it sealed yet. I wanted this side to end up having a little bit more time to cure before I ended up throwing on another coat. And I'm going to insert a picture in here it's just going to have one seal coat, but it's the back side to this clock piece that I'm doing. And it's going to be tucked up against the wall, so I'm not really concerned about that. But you can see how it's more towards the amber color. If I didn't put that Keda Dye liquid dye stain mix with that denatured alcohol in those grains, it would probably be a lighter color, very similar to something like this piece. But let's face it, it's just something that I wanted to end up having, and I just wanted to finish it as well to kind of, like I said, kill two birds with one stone. So this is that pine piece, just straight out pine with the two coats of the yellow stain on the top, and the polyurethane. I think it turned out really nice. The pine actually is now blotching, and this is the 2x4, and this is probably the lowest grade of all of the woods, are these 2x4s, because it's just building boards. So they're not hand selected, or you know, they're not, you know, they're just lower grade materials for the most part. But these dyes really ended up doing a good job on them. And pretty quick here, I'm going to end up showing the side-by-side comparison. But, you know, I mean, for the most part, you know, I spend some time with my family. I have some things going on that in the short term may not be the greatest, but hopefully it's going to end up being good for the long term. And, you know, there's some issues going on with, you know, people saying things, and I just don't understand, you know, how some of this comes about. But I mean, you can get 60 ounces of wood stain out of this 5-gram packet. And, you know, this is funny because this thing reminds me of like one of those hypnosis machines, you know, just the way that wood is reflecting, and it's just beautiful. You will like this video. You will like this video. I'm just kidding. I'm playing. But anyways, I really hope that, that something in here is something that you've been looking for, that, you can see what the stain looks like. I know that the powders look a little bit orange for the yellow, but it really is yellow. Is it a true yellow, a pure yellow? I can't say that, because you know what? I could put a 3200K light in instead of a 5K light, and I could change that color without doing anything else. So it's, I don't know what a pure yellow is or how to make it, but I think this is pretty close. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I apologize for being gone a little bit longer. I'll try to get a little more content out. And, thank you for supporting the channel and us. And really, really do appreciate it. More than you guys ever will understand. Thank you guys. And I'll talk to you again soon.